So you've hit your tee shot and the ball's just rolled off the fairway and it's in the semi-rough. Well, now you've got a decision to make, and that decision is going to be based, as always, on how far you've got to go to the hole. But also bear in mind your strategy. Is it worth risking going for the green, or would it be safer just to play up short into a wider part of the fairway and chip and putt from there? The biggest factor, though, is always going to be your lie. So before you do anything, you need to work out what the biggest club would be that would allow you a good clean hit and out towards the hole. As it is, I've actually got quite lucky. This ball is sitting right on top of the grass, almost as if it's on a tee. And that's going to give me some options. I can play this shot with all of my irons, I can certainly play my rescue club, and I might even be able to play my 3-wood. In this case though, I don't need to hit the ball that far, so I'm going to use a 6-iron. But it's not quite as straightforward as making a normal swing. I need to be careful that I don't swing down too low or too steeply and get underneath the ball. Remember, the ball is sitting 2 or 3 inches above the floor. So when I set up, I'm going to hover the club slightly off the floor so the club is actually now level with the ball. And in my downswing, I need to return to that height with a shallow and sweeping contact. You also need to bear in mind that this ball, sitting on top the way it is, isn't going to spin when it lands. So do allow some room for that in your club choice. You're not always going to be that lucky though. Most of the time when the ball's landing in the semi-rough, it's actually going to be sitting down a little bit. Now before you just work out your yardage and hit the club to go that distance, you really need to consider the type of lie it is. Now the ball's sitting down a fair bit in this case, and well, I've got a rescue in my hands, but just because it's called a rescue doesn't mean it's going to get the ball out of every lie. The irons are always going to have a slightly more steep angle of attack and have a better chance of getting the ball out cleanly. So the last thing I want to do is to try and play a club which is too long and has too little loft, because if that's the case, the ball won't even go 20 yards. It'll just get stuck in the long grass in front of me. So sometimes I'll play a rescue, but that ball is lying down too deeply. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be playing an 8-iron. I think that's probably the longest club I can use and safely get some distance on it. So I need to get steeper down on the ball, which means leaning forwards, making the ball move back in my stance slightly, and also angling the shaft forwards as well. During my swing, I'm going to keep my weight on that left foot and allow the club to chop down steeply onto the back of the ball, punching the ball forwards. And that's way better than trying to play too much club and getting the ball stuck in the rough. And sometimes you'll find your ball in the deep rough. But it's a lot better than a lost ball scenario, and if I play this the right way, I'll be able to get the ball back into the fairway, and I may even chip and putt from there. So let's at least get this thing out. Now, the way to play these is to get the club moving down at the ball a lot steeper than normal. Now, whenever we get the club coming down steeply into the ball, it's going to take loft off the club. So we need plenty of that to start with. This is my sand wedge. A lob wedge would also do. So I'll approach the ball, again intending to get that steep angle of attack. So my weight's forwards, my stance is fairly wide, and the ball's towards the back. My hands are further down the handle than normal, and what that allows me to do is to pick my wrists up very quickly and very steeply. So I'm going to miss all this grass behind me, but I'm also going to get a really sharp chopping motion down into the ball. My usual circular arc would sweep in and of course catch all this thick grass here, which is no good. So I'll be aggressive, keep my weight leaning forwards, and make sure I get the ball first. That's just about got back onto the fairway. So when the ball's in the rough, the very first thing you need to do is to assess your lie. And if the ball's sitting up, well, you can play the shot pretty much like a normal swing. If the ball's sitting down in any way, then we need to get in some way steep on the ball and with more loft. Once you've assessed the lie, you can then work out what the maximum club is that you'll be able to hit the ball cleanly out of the lie. And that way you'll know how far you can hit it. But do remember, it's always easier to use a more lofted club.